you, Pastor. Just a reminder, we have more people that just arrived. If you could please check your phones once more and please silence them. Just wanted to make sure the live stream is also up and running. Perfect, thank you. Before we began the eulogy, we asked for your patience as we illustrate the history of our family, which was ultimately Papa's proudest achievement. Raman, or as we call him, Papa, was born on April 1st, 1945 in Damar, India, to mother Valiben Ranchoji of Damar and father Ranchoji Kalidas of Dero in Gujarat, India. When he was just one, Valima and Ranchodada moved their new family to Malawi, a voyage taken by ship. They stayed in Malawi until 1952, when Valima went back to Dero with her children. By then, Ramabai's siblings included his sisters, Uspaben and Lalitaben, and brother, Dayarabai. They were in Dero for about 5 years. In 1957, Valima went back to Malawi to be with Ranchodada, taking Lalitaben with her, leaving Ramabai, Uspaben, and Dayarabai in India, where they attended school. Ramabai stayed with his Daifu and family in Orna while attending elementary school. Uspaben stayed in Dama with her Dayamama and family. Dayarabai was in Gurukul Supa where he attended school. During this time, Ramabai's youngest sibling, Manharbai, was born in Malawi in 1958.
In 1959, at the age of 14, Ramabhai went back to Malawi to be with his parents and attend the Balaka Asian School. In 1961, Ramabhai joined his father's business, the general store, R.K. Das. In 1964, he was engaged to Savitaben Pulabai Bhakta of Raman. Ramabhai and Savitaben, or as we call her Montilumi, were wed on February 7, 1965 in Balaka, Malawi. In early 1965, Valima, Ranchodada, Lalitaben, and Manharbai left Malawi and made their way back to Dero. Uspaben was married to Hanjitbai Dayabai of Dero in 1965, and Lalitaben was married later that same year to Hasmulbai Kalidas of Vav. After both daughters were wed, Ranchodada went back to Malawi.
In November of 1965, Papa and Motimoni welcomed their first child, Divyashbhai, in Limbe, Malawi. Piyuse, their second son, was born shortly after in September of 1967. Meanwhile, in 1966, Dayarabai was wed to Sumitaben Gokarbai of Lotaro. In 1967, Ranchodada went back to India so he could take Puspafoy and Lalitafoy to London in hopes of establishing residency because they had British passports and since they were born in Malawi. Both Fuas joined them later. Both boys stayed with Bhagabai Goparbai Patel Dero when they got to London. Ranchodada returned to Malawi from London shortly after. In 1966, Naren went to Malawi to see if he could increase his chances to get a student visa to the United States. In 1969, Naren's student visa was granted, so he made the trek to California to begin his studies. Montimami and Papa were still in Malawi, managing the store. At that time, Papa started importing goods from South Africa to Malawi, successfully increasing the sales for his family store.
In 1970, Divyashbhai and Ranchodada went to India so he could enroll Divyashbhai in school, while Papa, Montimami, and a 1-year-old Piyuse stayed in Malawi managing the shop. In 1973, Ranchodada passed away in India, leaving Papa as the patriarch of our family at the young age of 28, with his family spread out among 3 countries. In 1974, Mortimoni and Piyuse went to London to stay with her family, Vidyalaya, Malima, and Bibimama, with Papa joining them in 1976.
Meanwhile, Manharbai and Divishbai were still in Naren with Valima and Sumitra. Rancho Dalla's brother, Kushala, and his wife Malima were also in Naren at the time, which helped the family significantly. In 1976, Naren got his green card and came to India to get Sumitra. They moved back to California to start their lives in America. Mortimoni came back to Naren from London to stay with Valima because Manharbai and Divishbai were still in school. In 1976, Papa came to Barstow, California on a visitor visa. In 1977, Papa, Larry, Sumitra all moved to Ellisville, Texas. Unfortunately, one day, while Papa was visiting San Antonio, where Lalita family lived at the time, he decided to go for a walk. The police stopped Papa and took him into custody for not having an updated visa. He was then deported and sent back to London, while Divishbai was still in India.
In 1978, Manharbai went to Malawi and stayed with his Santaven and Lalubai Patel of Thamar to also increase his chances of getting to America. Manharbai ended up staying with them for almost 4 years. In 1979, Mortimoni, Papa, Divishbai, and Valima went to London. By then, Puspaphoy was already living in the United States and was able to petition for Valima to get a green card, so Valima was able to immigrate to the United States. In 1979, Papa flew with Valima from London to Houston. Mortimoni's sister, Manjula Ben, and Kantibai Kushal of Mansa petitioned for a green card for Mortimoni, and it was granted in 1980, allowing her and her 2 sons to join the family in Houston, Texas. In 1980, the motels in Ellisville were sold and the family moved to Houston.
In 1981, Manharbai was able to come from Malawi to Houston on a visitor's visa. In 1982, he married Anila and Naranbai in Malako in Russellville, Arkansas, which not only allowed him to obtain his green card, but also to allow him to find the love of his life. At this time, the entire family was finally in Texas, including both boys and their families. After so many years apart, Valima and Papa's wish to have our entire family together came true, even if it meant we were in various cities in Texas. The 3 brothers and their families lived in the legendary house on Marion Lane. At this time, the only kids in the house were Divishbai, age 15, Piyuse, age 13, Getinbai, age 11, and Barwin, who was just 1 year old.
Don't worry, my time as the only baby came to a halt when Kuno was born in 1983. While we stayed at the house, our parents all took turns taking care of us and going to the motel, which is why we all feel like we grew up with 6 parents rather than just 2. Manhar uncle and Aminati were blessed with Priya in 1987 and Raj in 1991.
While I wasn't there for the earlier years at that Marion house, I know that our families were busy trying to establish their businesses. First in motels, then at dry cleaners, a few ventures in between, and ultimately back into hospitality.
While there were numerous hurdles thrown our way, financial and otherwise, Papa and all of our parents did a tremendous job of raising us to value the family bond, to make and cherish precious memories, and to always lend a helping hand. Papa really was the glue that bound us, and we are so thankful that Divishbai and Piyuse have set the same example for the rest of us. In 1990, while investigating a noise at Lexus Inn, Papa was shot in the leg. While that time is a little fuzzy for us, we all remember getting that terrifying call and not knowing how bad his wounds were and whether he would make it out safely. While many people in his situation would feel sorry for themselves, I distinctly remember him constantly telling others, "It could have been worse. I was lucky it wasn't higher."
In 1992, Vivishwai and Ajnaben Dheerajbhai Patel of Dhamma were married in Globe, Arizona. After their wedding, they also moved into the Naren house. At the time she got married, Bobby basically adopted 4 kids: myself, Gunabai, Barwen, and Priya, and we're forever grateful for her. In 1995, Papa and Mutumani welcomed their first granddaughter, Milan Divishkas. In 1996, my parents, Manharbai and Anila, moved to Best Western in Fairlawn with their family. Soon after, Motimoni and Papa moved out of the Marinon house into the Palace Inn at 290 in Anaheim. Their second grandchild, Arjun, was also born in 1996.
In 1998, Piyuse and Dipakbhai were married in Tulsa, Oklahoma. While they didn't move into the Marinon house, I was fortunate enough to have them living in Austin while I was in college. We are so thankful for Gita Bobby, who constantly embodies Papa's helpful nature.
In 2000, Papa and Motimoni welcomed their third grandchild, Satya, and in 2002, their fourth grandchild, Mira, had arrived. With Siddharth, their fifth, born in 2005. Papa loved being a grandfather. He would always step in whenever the grandkids needed to be transported from one place to another, while simultaneously getting them fed, washed, and ensuring they were well read. As a result, all the grandkids in the family are avid readers, digest fans.
While Papa had his strict moments when we were growing up, he also made sure we had some pretty amazing experiences. Some of our fondest memories at the Marinon house were getting to play in the rain, roasting chestnuts in the fireplace, while Papa peeled grapefruit for all of us, not leaving a peel in sight. I am thankful that my children had a chance to experience the art of the perfectly peeled grapefruit, and I will try my best to muster up the patience to carry on this tradition. Papa also made certain the entire family ate together, whether it was at home or out, even during the tough times. He would take the whole family to Fuddruckers. All of us kids would look forward to getting to pick our free cookie. The delight he would get from watching our joy was infectious. In the last few years, Papa spent more time connecting with us. Instead of lecturing us like when we were kids, he changed his approach by showing and taking an interest in our hobbies, travels, work, and our other interests. He took the time not only to send us various articles about topics he knew we were passionate about, but also educate himself about those topics so we could have more meaningful conversations. With the families growing within themselves and without the financial burden that occupied most of his life, Papa was finally able to embrace a less stressful and more jovial attitude. For example, he loved sending jokes and telling jokes, especially marital jokes, and he would always make sure you got the joke, almost to the point of explaining it word for word.
Papa and Motimoni stayed at the 290 property until the Loop House Inn on Harlem was built in 2006. With more free time on his hands, Papa quickly became a friendly fixture, not only at so many of our hotels, but also in the homes of so many friends and family members, bringing garden fresh vegetables and produce everywhere he went. While he spent his entire life giving, his philanthropic endeavors reached a new level in the last 15 years, which you may hear about from our speakers today. The Darrow Primary School was Papa's pride and joy. With the support of Kuchal's family and so many other Darrow leaders, we were able to build a new facility for the underprivileged, giving children who may not have otherwise had access to quality education, supplies, and a meal. Every time Papa's car would be in the village, the school children would get so excited because they knew he would bring them snacks. And not just any snacks, but high-quality snacks that they normally wouldn't get. By 2007, both boys and Fuas had moved to Houston, and Malawi finally had all 5 of her children living in the same city, which had never happened before. Papa valued travel and seeing the world. Despite Antimo's reservations about us leaving the nest, Papa encouraged us to travel and was always so excited when he found out one of us had a trip planned. He would ask what we were going to see, who we were going with, what food we were going to eat, and what kind of adventures we had planned. Growing up in the Marinon house, I barely remember the details since I was so young, but I do remember that we always had people staying with us at the house. I heard bits and pieces of the conversations about green cards and applications with petitions. The experience of being deported had a significant impact on Papa's life, as he went on to help so many others immigrate and settle in the United States.
Later, we would get approached by people who told us that they had stayed with us at the Marinon house and tell us how Papa and our family had helped them get settled when they first arrived to the U.S. At the time, I didn't realize how important such a seemingly small gesture could change the trajectory of so many lives. The one thing I can confidently say about Papa was that as he found opportunity, he also made sure to leave the door open for opportunity for others after him. It was never a question of having a bigger piece of the pie for himself, but rather making sure everyone had the chance to have their own pie. In his final years, Papa conveyed to many people how fulfilled his life was. He was happy with what he had, the family he had created, and the friendships he had nurtured. It gives us great comfort knowing that Papa left this world at peace with himself and his legacy. Now we will hear from Raman's grandchildren. Arjun and Satya Das, Milan Das, and Sid and Veera Das. If you could please come here.
One of the first things we learn as children is about the circle of life. When life is brought into this world, we must eventually be taken out. Our culture teaches us that we live our lives living up good or bad better, and when we pass, our soul is reborn. This world is full of takers and givers, and Papa was the truest giver of them all. He lived a complete and impactful life, and so it stands to reason that his soul will be reincarnated into something beautiful. This may be the case, but I also believe his soul has already broken the cycle. His soul isn't going to be reborn because it has already been inherited by every person he has selflessly helped throughout his life. From the lessons to the speeches, to the actions, to the memories, Papa showed us what it truly meant to live and to love. I promise to continue what you taught me and to be the man you knew I could become. I love you, Papa, and I will miss you dearly. Thank you for everything.
It's so good to see so many faces here today. I just wanted to say a few words about Papa and reiterate the same sentiment put forth by my brother and Roger Blumenthal. Papa was great at a lot of things. I believe his best quality was his ability to create and maintain relationships. It didn't matter who you were, Papa would strike up a conversation with you, whether you wanted to or not. And he would continue to build that relationship by calling you on a random Tuesday afternoon or sending you a video or inspirational quote through WhatsApp. As evident by the hundreds of people here in this room, he's done a lot for a lot of people. Papa was always about bringing everyone together. He's an inspiration to me and will continue to be one for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome to the stage Imtiaz Munshi, friend and CPA.
Friends, brothers and sisters, good afternoon. I have a question before I start. How many of you have heard a joke from Raman? There you go. That's the fondest memory that you're going to have of him, right? Same goes for me. I feel very lucky, very privileged to have known him. I met him many years ago when I was starting out my accounting and tax practice. Many of you here know me and know of me. And I'm very happy to say that in those early years, Raman and of course his brothers, Bhakta, Piyuse, they were great help in my business, and they impacted me in a very positive way. You'll hear a lot about how much he did for the community, how much he did in different countries around the world, but you'll also hear about, from people like me, what impact he had at a personal level. We all have people we know in our lives who we don't get to see often, we don't meet them often, we may not hear from them often, but somehow they stay in your memory for some reason because they've made an impact, they've nurtured the relationship, they have created these warm feelings that you have toward them. And that's how it was for me with Raman. Of course, we met a lot in the beginning days when I was first starting out my practice, but later on, as he got busy, I got busy, we wouldn't see much of each other, but he was always a presence somehow, and I think the same applies to many of you here, I'm sure. The first time I met him, he put me at ease with a joke, right? And he always had this khazana, this treasure trove of jokes. So every time I would see him, I would wonder what he would pull out of there the next time. They were a mix of vegetarian and non-vegetarian as well. So, yes, he had a big impact on my business in the early years. He was very freely introducing me to his friends, to help me grow my business. But that's not all. He actually taught me a very valuable life lesson as well. In business, when you're in business relationships, there are ups and downs. And sometimes there are disputes and misunderstandings. I happened to experience that myself with a friend of mine. And Raman got involved, and I watched as his tact and diplomacy, wisdom helped us to resolve our differences. And the one thing that I can share with you as a lesson that he taught me, which has stayed with me now, is never let a business misunderstanding or dispute get in the way of a personal relationship. I'm very happy to see all of you here. Obviously, he's made a big impact on all of your lives. And to the Das family, I thank you for allowing me to say a few words. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we'd like for Naren, Chavda, friend and director of Ekal Vidyalaya. Thank you.
Jai Shri Krishna and Ram Kabir. My name is Naren Chavda. I represent Ekal Vidyalaya. But more than that, I am in love with Raman. And my experience that I accumulated, I'm going to share that briefly with you. And his association with Ekal Vidyalaya too. So Jai Shri Krishna and Ram Kabir. I first met Raman in his office at ITEL, the memorial area. My co-volunteers and I were representing Ekal Vidyalaya. and Raman had assembled his core team. Palace Inn was on a mission to scout, interview, and select one of the education-based charities in town. We had a detailed discussion on how Ekal set up one-teacher schools for boys and girls in tribal villages in India. The Palace Inn team wanted to know how delivery of education and funding was managed. A few weeks later, Palace Inn notified, and notably Jin Laxmidas told us that Ekal was selected as their charity of choice. Our relationship began with a generous annual donation. As the chief guest at one of Ekal's musical fundraiser events, Raman shared his challenging journey of education and adventure from his village to Africa and beyond. And you heard that journey in more detail from his grandchildren. How much he valued education and growth opportunities for the villagers was demonstrated a year later by him sponsoring an IVD in the Dam tribal region not far from his village thereof. IVD, for your information, is an acronym for Integrated Village Development, embracing a cluster of 30 villages with schools, health service, women empowerment centers like tailoring schools, computer lab for the young youth, vocational training, and organic farming. During one of his visits to the tailoring centers, he met with young ladies. His caring and inquisitive mind wanted to know of their learning experience and attendance. All replied affirmatively, but two girls said they could only attend occasionally due to remoteness and lack of transport. What happens next? Speaks volumes for Raman. Two bicycles were delivered to the young ladies overnight. Little did I know that in just 8 years from our first meeting, I will be here paying tribute to Raman, a humble, diligent, meticulous, kind, and loving philanthropist. May your superior legacy, Raman, be kept alive by your loved ones. May your divine soul rest in eternal peace in the heavenly abode. We will continue to cherish and celebrate the noble ideals of your love. Om Shanti.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work you did for us and all the work you do for all the kids in India. We really, really appreciate it. Next, we'd like to welcome Mr. Jin Laxmidas to the stage. Jin Uncle was one of us closest friends, and you rarely see Papa without Jin Uncle by his side.
Brother, parent figure, Papa to my children. My dearest friend for 21 years. I cry tears of joy of knowing such a wonderful soul. He was lost for so many around the globe. From the moment of getting him in 1989, I felt his kindness and unwavering love. The entire Das family embraced me, making me one of their own. The beautiful soul, the caring gentle giant, became my North Star, my guiding light, who walked beside me for 21 years. I am honored to call him my friend. He loved to help people. He had a genuine concern for the future of my family in Africa and encouraged me to relocate to Houston. He introduced me to an attorney and a CPA, taking time out of his busy day to come with me and to help me navigate the immigration system. In 2001, he encouraged me to bring my wife and children and settle here in Houston and become part of the Das family. Thus began our journey and adventure in life together. Over the years, I met countless people, all of you, through him. Countless people who shared the same journey, coming into Raman life. He helped them with their families to immigrate to the United States and to share in the American dream. He had no ego. He never told anybody about what he did. He quietly helped and continued to do so time and time again. He loved America for all that America gave to him and his family. He was a patriot and a lifelong supporter of the experiment that is America. Every time he was ready to buy a new car, he would say, "Hey Jim, let's go buy a Mercedes." So we would go to the dealership, we would select the model, the accessories, the color, take the test drive, do the paperwork, and come home with an American Cadillac. His loyalty to America was unwavering. He had a great sense of humor. In a room full of people, there was always a crowd forming around him. They wanted a piece of his wisdom. Often he shared these in nuggets of wisdom interwoven in humor. You heard earlier that he loved to tell a joke, some veg and some non-veg. I learned to listen carefully when he made some jokes. And one time, after meeting a religious person and having been sermonized beyond your dreams, he quietly said to this person in parting, he said, "I may have gone to the steakhouse and drank alcohol, and I am a sinner. Forgive me. But I have never drank my brother's blood." Miles later down that journey, I asked him, what did that mean? And he explained it to me. And the person who we were talking to had done so many things to his own family. It was shocking to me. But Raman never talked of people. He talked of ideas and great ideas. He saw life with clarity like no other person I have met. He could sum up something in one sentence. I find it hard to do that, I'm sorry. He often shared that life was made up of 4 equal parts of 20 years each. Please pay attention. The first 20 years we do what our parents say. The second 20 years we do what our spouses say. In the third 20 years we do what our children say. And in the fourth 20 years, we look around like an owl. Nobody wants to listen to us. He was adventurous. Long before GPS and Google Maps, we were driving out on the New Jersey Turnpike, late in the middle of the night with lots and lots of rain and hopelessly lost. In the morning, his only mission, so we got to the hotel around 12 o'clock midnight, and in the morning, his only mission was to find this place that he had read on the billboard. In all this chaos, the thing that he saw was the billboard that said, "The world's largest breakfast." Guess what room I was looking for? The world's largest breakfast. So we made a detour, and it turned out to be a hilarious experience. Pancakes the size of large 20-inch pizzas, stacked up high, half a foot tall, and enough hash browns on the side that could serve an army. and he just spoke of this often and with affection. And many a time, this type of adventure came from being lost. He had a very interesting take on life, and every time we got a rental car and drove down the road and looked at the map and got lost, he would say, make a U-turn. So after that, a few times we did this, he said to me, hey Jin, as soon as we leave the rental car lot, make a U-turn. We made many friends along the way. He loved humanity. We once sat through an hour-long presentation on a new investment opportunity. Of course, we were business people, we were looking for investment opportunities. Imtiaz is over there, he'll tell you. We often found interesting things. Mr. Crain will tell you how many companies he formed for us and how many ventures we got into. He was never bored. He was always ready to do something new. We once sat through this 1 hour presentation. The investment opportunity was presented, and he asked one question, what's the objective of this company? And the guy said, very proudly, to make a lot of money, Mr. Das. And he said, okay, even a drug dealer can make a lot of money. So let us know when you've got something that changes humanity. Such was the humanitarian in Raman. He was a champion of the underdog. An elderly couple ran a falafel house down the road from us. We often went there for lunch. I noticed the exceptional service they were giving him all the time we walked in there, and it was very unusual. They would pay extra attention. They knew exactly what he wanted. He didn't have to order. And one day I went there alone, and the elderly couple shared something with me. They said many years ago, Ramadas had come in here. He didn't know who we were. It was a new restaurant. He sat down, he ordered, he sat down, and very quickly, he noticed that the electric company had sent a man to take the meter out because he hadn't paid. They had forgotten to pay the electric bill in all their haste when they were trying to open their restaurant. So in true Ramadas fashion, he got up, he talked to the guy, put his hand in his pocket, never expecting to be repaid. He paid the bill. They were ever so indebted to him. Not because they didn't have the money, but because the electric man would not wait for them to go to the bank. They had a lifelong relationship based on that one experience. Speaking of underdogs, he loved betting on the underdog in the Super Bowl. If you ever knew, he was always betting on the underdog. And people were always second guessing him. But the next day, I was the single guy standing in line to pick up the money at the counter. Because everybody else was betting on the favorites. Here's Ramadas betting on the underdog. And then when we won a pile of money, he invited 20 people to the table and spent the money on entertaining a bunch of people just to get to know them. He was a believer in freedom for all humanity. In his own way, he lived the teachings of Gandhi. That's something that Yashua and Ahmedabad. Seeing how Gandhi had lived with so little, he was moved to tears by the formidable strength and resolve Gandhi had shown against the British Empire. Martin Luther King was another one of his heroes. A few months ago, we got the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. on the Mall and stand in front of Martin Luther King's monument and have a picture taken with a classic pose. But he didn't just stop there. He looked up at his hero and he said, you know, if more people could learn to live like Martin Luther King's words, he said, unfortunately there was a hearing problem. I said, what type of hearing problem was there? And he said, well, Martin Luther King said, I had a dream. And half the world heard, I had a drink. They went to the bar. They're still there. And humanity is in a sad state. He was a true Karma Yogi. So many of us are here because of him. He believed in hard work and providing for his family. More importantly, he believed in doing things for the greater good of man. I recall a phone call from a young hotelier in Texas many years ago, and many after that, in a similar vein. He told me that when his father passed away many years ago, and when they were young, Raman had helped his family financially to save their motel. Now that they were able to repay the debt, he wanted to know how much interest he should pay Raman. I relayed the message to Raman. After much contemplation and not knowing who these people were, he figured out eventually that he must have done something, and he refused the interest and asked them to do for somebody else what he did for them. He didn't need religious books to guide his actions. His actions were always perfect because they were carried out in a manner that positively impacted others and benefited all around him. He loved education. On our long drives to so many cities, he often shared with me his fondest memories of going to their primary school and sitting on the floor and learning from passionate teachers with very little, and the joy of sharing with his friends, playing with his friends in the playground, with no real toys and the rural farming life of poverty. He shared how lonely he felt when he moved with his mother to be with his father in rural Malawi. There were no schools and no friends. Over the years, he supported many Malawian students. Not even his family is aware of it. We sent many checks. We made many deposits, some personally, for students who had come here and were stranded and who didn't have the means to pay for their education. He did this out of his heart and out of his pocket, never mentioning to anybody. When we visited their primary school together, he was moved to tears and vowed to do something more for rural education in his birthplace. Recently, through his efforts, a new school was constructed. You heard about that from Raj. I felt honored to be associated with that school and to make my small contribution, and I will continue to do that. If you do nothing else today to honor Raman Das, his friendship and his life journey, please make a contribution to their primary school by going to the website. I have been honored to share 21 years of my life with such a pure soul, always at my side. I have experienced his unconditional love for people. I have witnessed his caring nature. I have benefited from the wisdom. Most of all, I have gained a family in Houston. The Das family has stood with me in all my trials and tribulations, and I know that they will be there for me forever. I will miss my friend. I will miss my friend, my mentor, my parent figure. His shoes will be hard to fill. I will try to do better in my life and to walk in his footsteps. I hope that you all too try to do the same. Thank you, and Ramsey.
Next, we're not sure if he's here. Rahul, Reddy? Perfect. Rahul Reddy is an immigration attorney that Bhakta worked with often in his later years to help other people come to America.
My association with Mr. Raman Das started last millennium, so that's 1919 to be exact. And with all the immigration troubles the family has gone through, I was a very young lawyer at that time. He would not have hired me as a lawyer. How did he end up hiring a lawyer? Actually, he wanted to hire Mr. Halim,
God bless him. He was my mentor. I used to work with Mr. Halim. So I went to Mr. Halim because at that time there was a provision that allowed any person who is here who is working in the motors can get a green card at that point of time. So he went to Mr. Halim. Mr. Halim said, I'm retiring. Go to Mr. Rahul Reddy. He will take care of you. But he's just, just started recently. No, he will take care of it. I taught him immigration law. You go to him. So Mr. Halim called me that Mr. Munshi is coming. Going to meet him, take care of him. Mr. Munshi came to my office. He said that I have approximately around 60 people that need to be taken care of for green card. So that's a lot of number for me. There's a lot of money for me too. And since you're highly recommended by Mr. Halim, we went through the process, what immigration needs to be, and he wants to get involved in everything. He has so many different companies at that point of time, and I think that's true we have. And everything, I told him what the conditions needed, what the documents needed, he noted down all the things. Then comes the money part. I know Gujaratis are business people, they're very good in negotiation. I am a little bit hard-headed guy. I fix my fees, I never negotiate the fix. What do? It's the biggest deal of my life at that point of time. So my fees was actually 3,600. So I said to Mr. Munshi, 4,000 is my fees, so that I would think that he would negotiate and I'll come down to 3,600. Then he said, that fees is not acceptable. He said it's 4,400. But I want good service. I want everybody of my employees to get a green card, resident green card. And it's just not the money payment, it's just not the way he got the cases to me. He made sure every case that comes, there's a requirement, I need to go to advertisement, he gets involved in it. These people will be interviewed by the immigration. He used to come to the interview, and of course in the interview, the lawyer is allowed, client is allowed, Mr. Raman is not allowed into the immigration building. He used to wait outside the building, wait for the people to get the green card. He wanted to see the people there, and his employees' joy when they get the green card when they come from the immigration office. He used to drive all the way to San Antonio just to experience that. So many times he drove me to San Antonio to just get the experience. I can only witness, I'm a witness of the way he used to take care of the employee. If I were his employee, I would work 10 times more for him than to any other employee, even if they pay me double the money. Thanks for his hiring me as a rookie. At that point of time, I was solo practitioner. Now I can announce myself that our law firm, Reddy PC, is the biggest Indian-owned law firm in the entire United States. And we have Mr. Munshi present. God bless him.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. If I could please have Mr. David Salako come to the podium. Mr. Salako is from the Malawi Book Project and also became a close friend of Bhakta's.
Namaste, everyone. Good evening. My name is David Salako, and I live here in the Greater Houston area with my wife and 2 little boys. And I would like to share some of my memories and experiences with Raman Das, or Mr. Das, as I respectfully and fondly call him. A few years ago, in 2018, in the great city of Atlanta, Georgia, I had the good fortune to attend the first US Malawi Friends Conference organized by some leaders within the Gujarati, Indian, Malawian diaspora. I had heard about this planned conference at an earlier Malawi diaspora conference in Washington, D.C., and I thought it would be another enjoyable experience to attend and meet with other Malawians, friends of Malawi, that share perhaps even deeper roots in some ways than I did with our beautiful corner of Africa. While in Atlanta for 2 days, my plan was to meet new people, enjoy the seemingly endless good food that was generously provided by our wonderful hosts, and also in attendance were 2 Malawian ambassadors to the United States and the United Nations, respectively. Following the presentations these ambassadors made, I was invited by one of the ambassadors to present to the group about my volunteer literacy efforts in Malawi. It was a speech that I had not prepared for. I didn't plan to speak. I planned to be anonymous, have good food, drink a lot, and then go back home to Houston. In this impromptu speech, I shared about being born in Blantyre, my Malawian family coming from the highlands in the furthest northern corner of Malawi, in Chitipa, our eventual departure from Malawi in the 1970s as a young child, and my extended families, my cousins, our eventual dispersion across the world for various reasons, which I don't have to go into if you knew the political situation in Malawi at the time. In those many years away from Malawi, I never forgot about home and the haunting beauty and the generosity of people back home in Malawi. Furthermore, I shared about my parents' eventual return to Malawi in the 2010s and my visit to their property and being moved by the extraordinary poverty in rural Malawi and especially the lack of access to books by most rural Malawians. Just the idea of reading for pleasure, of opening up a book, or just having a book apart from the Bible in your house just seemed non-existent. It was a shocking reality that followed me back to Houston when I got here. When I got back to Houston, some generous friends and donors and I started an initiative with the help of some famous Malawians like William Kamkwamba, the protagonist from The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and we were able to raise some funds and ship 2 40-foot containers of books that we curated from all over the United States. This amounted to about 80,000 books, which we used to set up about 15 libraries in villages all over northern Malawi. With enough sponsorship and financial backing, we were able to curate these books, and our largest expense at the time was the shipping of the books, which cost $12,000 per container from Houston to Malawi, over the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, across Mozambique, and into Malawi. I thanked the audience for indulging me in my impromptu speech, and I thought nothing more of it. As the events were wrapping up in Atlanta, a gentleman suddenly stood up at the front of the room and asked for that young man from Houston who had earlier talked about books and shipping books to Malawi and shipping costs. That gentleman's name was Mr. Raman Das. He pledged in front of the group to help us with covering the costs of shipping for at least one container a year, 140-foot container a year, to different parts of Malawi for the next few years. He didn't put a cap on how many years he was going to help us do this. It was an open-ended promise. I was kind of taken aback. I checked that I'd not drunk too much wine, or that everyone seemed very happy, the wine was flowing, and I wanted to make sure I heard correctly, and he invited me to the front of the room and reiterated his promise in front of witnesses and said that this was what we were going to do. I was grateful by his generosity and went back to Houston, and I hoped for the best. A few months later, back in Houston, I met up again with Raman, and he visited our warehouse in Houston a couple of times, and he complimented our team on our dedication, our energy, and our sense of generosity. In Mr. Das' fashion, he also gave me advice on where we could get a better deal on a warehouse in Houston, and sort of discussed real estate rates and improving, and also gave me some tips on improving upon my sales pitch skills, because our operation was far bigger and far more precise than he had first imagined. He was very kind. He eventually paid for 2 40-foot containers, which shipped about 85,000 books one to Limbe Blantyre and the other to Karonga in the north of the country. Those books so far helped us support 18 existing and new rural library locations in Malawi. It is no exaggeration to say that thousands have benefited and are continuing to benefit from this feast of the knowledge of books, of the knowledge contained within these books. My volunteer literacy efforts are not the only thing Mr. Das and I talked about during what became more regular discussions and meetings over the last 4 years. He would tell me about his early years in Balaka, Malawi, taking over his father's business when he was in his 20s. Balaka was a settlement I knew almost nothing about in Malawi, except the one thing I knew about Balaka is that it was the halfway point when you were driving from the city of Blantyre to Lilongwe. And I remember stopping there as a child a few times. We would stop there, we would buy curio items, little statues and things that are still present in the homes of some of my siblings to this day. At other times, Raman would suddenly turn very serious when he described the racially charged realities of life in Southern Africa and in Malawi in those times. He would share with me that on a deeper level, he felt that his community and himself could, or maybe should have been more integrated in some ways, though he was not specific about what he was talking about, and I did not ask. I did share, though, that my experience was not only observing racism, but also tribalism, colorism, and almost every ism you could think of was sort of intertwined with this sort of really beautiful place and sort of quiet corner of the world. Much of that also contributed to my own family being exiled in one form or the other and scattered across the world on 3 continents. On happier subjects, Mr. Das talked a great deal about his own family, his children, his nephews, his nieces, his grandchildren, all his efforts to immigrate to England and subsequently to the United States. He mentioned something about a deportation at some point, but then I thought maybe I misheard and he was talking about somebody else. He talked about the struggles and the challenges in getting himself and everyone else he greatly loved and cared about settled and successful in the new world. As the eldest in my family, I too shared somewhat of a leadership mantle and underwent similar trials and triumphs to get my 5 siblings settled in the United States and in England as well. So I kind of understood a little of what he was talking about. I also noticed that when he would talk about his family members, he would not focus on their academic achievements or careers, but would comment on their character, their determination, fortitude, and his efforts to show them examples of kindness and generosity, as well as the value of hard work. I came to also learn about his philanthropic efforts in India and how much he loved going there on a regular basis. I surmised that he was a very busy man and derived a lot of internal fulfillment and satisfaction from his various pursuits. And some final thoughts. I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. Most of my family were academics, intellectual types, and entrepreneurship was kind of foreign to my upbringing. And my father, sadly passed away some time ago. Raman became somewhat of a father figure to me, giving me pointers and advice on how to succeed with the prototypes and enterprising ideas that I had been cultivating and nurturing for many years. And he also helped me pay for some data science exams and courses out of the blue during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was not something I asked him for, it was something he just did, just listening to me talk about the things that I was trying to accomplish or achieve in my life. Our very last conversation focused on his excitement at having closed on a purchase of some hospitality properties in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which he and some business partners had managed to close, and he said it was one of the crowning business achievements of his life. The near future for him was full of excitement and anticipation. He also congratulated me on the purchase of our new home, which we just moved into a few months ago, and asked me about property prices and talking about that was a good deal and that was a good investment and well done. And we also talked about my surprise quadruple heart bypass surgery, which I just had 8 weeks ago. He told me that all would be well and that I should be strong and I would come out fighting on the other side of the surgery. I would miss his friendship, his endless quotes, his jokes, and seemingly boundless energetic enthusiasm. I would like to think maybe I will get to meet him at least one more time in some fashion. Zikomo Pambili, Raman.
Thank you, Mr. Salako. If we could please have Dipakbhai, Bhakta come to the podium. Dipakbhai is a family friend of ours.
First of all, I would like to thank Savita Mami and entire Das Parivar for allowing me to speak here today. Raman, Mama means mother's brother. Since me and my sister were growing up in India, only thing we knew, this is Raman Mama, Daya Mama, and Mama. And Raman Mama was really I'm sorry, but let me draw the connection. The relationship is, my Nani is real sister of Raman Mama. But if the third person has to figure it out, he wouldn't have figured out that my mother wasn't his real sister. That's the kind of relationship he always kept and maintained throughout his life. I had some great memories and a lot of good experiences with Raman Mama. He was a very kind-hearted, very helpful person, especially to me and my family. I would like to say a couple of things. Back in the early 80s, when we first came from India, that was the first time we were flying anywhere, and all of a sudden we came from a small village and landed at JFK. Had no clue how to find a connecting flight to Houston or anything like that. And next thing we know, Raman Mama walks in with a big smile on his face. And we were so happy to see him. Now, he didn't have to do that, but he did it. Why? Because he cared. And I have a lot of experiences like that throughout the life, but I would like to share another thing. Little over a year ago, my wife had a very serious car wreck, and for a few days, we couldn't even tell what was really going to happen. And Mama was trying to get in touch with me, and unfortunately I wasn't able to talk to him because I had so many phone calls that I couldn't possibly answer. But he texted me and he always comforted me and let me know. And one of the texts that I remember he sent me said, "Deepak, hang in there, do not worry about anything. Mama is only a phone call away. For anything, just give me a call." And that was so comforting for me. And Mama's love, care, and concern for personally me will forever remain in my heart. And in my opinion, these few lines in Gujarati best describes who Raman Mama truly was. પરિવાર જેમનું મંદિર હતું, સ્નેહ જેમની શક્તિ હતી, પરિશ્રમ જેમનું કર્તવ્ય હતું, પરમાર્થ જેમની ભક્તિ હતી, કર્મ સદા એવા કર્યા કે સૌના હૃદયમાં પૂજ્યા કરી. આપનો પ્રેમાળ સ્વભાવ અમારા માટે પ્રેરણાદાયક રહેશે. પ્રભુ આપના દિવ્ય આત્માને શાંતિ આપે, એ જ પ્રાર્થના. રામ.
Before our final speaker, we'd like to invite Mr. Crain, who's a friend and legal counsel for Bhakta.
Good afternoon. My name is Crain. So the problem sometimes of being at the end of the line is that everything has already been said about Ramadas. And every bit of it, I'm certain it's true. It's been my experience. We'll try to add something. I look out here and I see, maybe 1,500 people. What a testament to Raman and the life that he lived. I first met Raman back in the 1990s, probably somewhere between 1992 and 1995. He was a longtime client of John Tubar, who practiced law in the same office where I did. And John brought him down the hall and introduced him to me and said, he needs some help, and I can't get to it right now. Can you sit down and do this? I said, sir. So that was my first introduction to Raman, and he came back, and I was in our office and out of our office probably over the next 20 years, many times. Sometimes he'd come by himself, sometimes he'd bring a room full of people to do all the details at one time. At other times he'd just come and bring any comment, which certainly was appreciated. But he and I would frequently take some time to ourselves to sit and talk about life in general, about our families, politics, religion, or just whatever maybe came to our mind. And over those 20 or so years, I came to have a deep appreciation for who Raman was and the things that he did. We never talked much about what he did. What he did was a word passing rather than what I did. That's what Raman was about, as you all know. But what I noticed as much as anything is that Raman loved his family and was proud of his family. And he was a generous human being. When he spoke to me of his family, he always just had a little smile on his face. He spoke with affection. He spoke with pride. And I'll tell you, I'll share a story with you, and I think you'd be okay with me telling this story. He was telling me one day, he said, I pick up my grandchildren from school a lot of days and take them home. He said, I enjoy that. It gives me an opportunity to spend some time with them. It gives me an opportunity to see how they react and respond to their classmates. And then the ride home, I learned other things about them. So today or yesterday, they were talking about going to Walmart, talking about discounted blue jeans and these other kinds of things that they wanted. And he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the whole family to India this summer. It's time for them to see where they came from, to understand their heritage, to understand the differences in lifestyles, and understand the differences in culture. That was important to Raman, just as his family was important. What a great experience for everybody. I hope that worked out I've ever heard. It spoke volumes. The next thing I thought I would touch on, I don't need to say too much about it, but I knows about Raman's business successes. But Raman was different in my mind. He wasn't just chasing deals for money and see how fast he could make a lot of money. He was building something. He was going to build it his way, and he was going to do it right. I never saw Raman get upset in a meeting. I never heard him raise his voice. But I always enjoyed sitting in meetings with him because he would sit quietly, listening intently. And when it came time for him to speak, he would say it in 10 words or less. I've never knew anybody who could speak volumes of things in so few words. But that was Raman. He had the ability to filter out all the extra things and bring it down to very concise, very simple points. And he knew where he stood, he knew what he thought. He didn't have to agree with him. It wasn't important. He wasn't going to try to change your mind, but he was going to open the floor for discussion if you didn't agree with him. At the end of the day, Raman seemed too concerned about bending people to his will. He just thought, well, I can walk away from this if that's what we need to do. It's not about getting the deal done at all costs. So, I thought that served him well in his business life. The other thing, and all these have been touched on, and I'm going to just tell you, if I had to describe Raman in one word, it would be humanitarian. He loved people, he was interested in people, he cared about people. But he didn't seek recognition, he just did it. He did it because he wanted to do it. And he didn't care what other people knew, and you all know that. I'm sure this room is full of people who were the beneficiaries of his kindness and his willingness to help. I know his families came to this country, we've all heard of it. He helped them find places to live, helped them find jobs, helped them start businesses, whatever it was that needed to be done so that they could build for their families. But I wanted to say that, when I was talking about his business, he was building a business really not so much for the money, but one that would take care of itself. He was building it for this day, the day when he knew he wouldn't be here anymore. And he wanted to feel comfort, and I know he does, but knowing that his family would be able to carry on and function without him. They'll miss him and do anything to have him back, and we all understand that. But he got it to where it needed to be, and that was what I thought motivated him as much as just a strong work ethic. So I'll close with the last thing I would like to express my deepest condolences to all of you. At least in the family, and tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Next, I'd like to call it Piyuse. Just speak a little bit on Piyuse. Wow. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Arjun and Satya. Thank you, Imtiaz, Naren, Rahul, Scott, David, Dipakbhai, Jin, and Robert for all of your wonderful words. I know there are many people here that want to come up here and speak and to share their stories today. But the reality is everyone's hungry for Dad's favorite dinner, so I'm going to wrap up with some of my thoughts about that. Here we go. I had the chance to travel to Malawi a few years back. with mom and dad. It was Dad's first time back to Malawi since he had left. And I discovered a word that I think sums up Dad's life beautifully. It's a Chichewa word, Umutu. In Swahili, it's Ubuntu. It has different meanings. One meaning is humanity, but in a more profound sense, it means the belief in a universal bond that connects all of humanity. Its most common translation is, I am because we are. To me, that's what sums up Dad's life. I am because we are. In other words, he was who he was for all of us. He's always intuitively known that his own individual success tasted sweet only if the people he loved had success also. I am because we are Ubuntu. And because he understood that philosophy of Ubuntu, Dad became an amazing investor. A big investor in the Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger kind of way. As you already found out, he invested his time and money in the most valuable asset on the planet, other people. He used the most valuable currency that anyone has, his time and attention. He always had time for you. He didn't give you attention just once, but he gave it to you time and time again. He made a habit out of it. He always had time for you. He always had time to listen, to support, to give you money, to give you a nudge forward when you needed it, and also to set you straight if you needed that too. But most importantly, he had time to connect with you, and he had time to see who you really were. He had a way of elevating people that he came in contact with. As Caitlin reminded me 2 days ago, Dad's question to you was never why you did something or why something happened. It was always, why not? When you came home with 3 A's and 2 B's, he wouldn't say, why did you get 2 B's? He would always say, hey, that's great. That's fantastic. Congratulations, let's celebrate. Why not straight A's next time? Yes, I know we've tried that on our kids, right? And our kids give us crazy stares and roll their eyes at us. We can't get over that. Dad could. It was in his sincere and kind delivery. His tone was never one of disappointment or dissatisfaction. It was always delivered in a happy way that challenged and motivated you to be better. When you said, I just landed a great job at a great company, he would say, that's fantastic, congratulations, let's celebrate. Then he would say, why don't you own the company in the next 5 years? Again, in a way that only Dad could deliver, in a way that got you asking yourself, well, sure, yeah, why not? I'm sure my brother got this exact same sequence of questions when he built his first hotel. Dad probably said to him, that's fantastic, son. Congratulations on your first hotel. Let's celebrate. By the way, why not build 50? And look at my brother now, look at what he's accomplished. Dad would be proud and celebrated your successes. And even when your hubris would get the better of you and you got a big head, he would be okay with that and celebrate that too. He never tried to rein you in. He always understood that we could all do better. And he would challenge you to do it. When you got a big head, he would always ask you, what's next? It was that, so he took everything he said to heart, because he knew he was challenging you, and when he challenged you, it came from a very sincere place, from his love for you. The world was big, and he wanted you to be big in it, his philosophy of Ubuntu. Whether you liked it or not, with his guidance and support, he created an ecosystem where the answer was always yes. I don't know if there are many obstacles that he couldn't go through or get over or go around. Dad was street smart, and there was not a problem he couldn't solve. If he couldn't solve a problem, he knew someone that could. He was a fixer. By the way, Das friend, guess what he said yes to me about? He said yes to buying land and museum, so let's get to it. The funny thing is that before Dad was Dad, before he took on his responsibilities, he was a total hipster. He dressed in the coolest clothes, grew out his hair, and had this wickedly long sideburns. He was an Indian hippie. He embraced everything that Martin Luther King and JFK stood for. All of this while living in Malawi. He was always up to date on all of the current events. He was well read because he loved reading all the newspapers he could get his hand on. He got a lot done with the limited resources he had. In a different generation, he would have been known as a total baller. He lived large. He did things that defied logic. He was fearless. He could talk to anyone and he could get anything he wanted done. That same spirit happily lives in the two people that are most like my dad, my brother and one uncle. When, Dad always likes to joke around and he was a prankster. When I was recently in India, Justin Lassi related a story to me. When Dad was in Malawi with the store, he used to always send care packages back to India, packed with all sorts of goodies. Justin Lassi, his younger unmarried sister-in-law, was of course expecting her customer package of perfume, clothes, and other indulgences from Dad that she always received on a regular basis. So Dad sent her another package. He sent it COD, meaning that she had to pay for the postage to pick it up. She was so excited. She borrowed some money, retrieved the package from the post office, opened it only to find diapers and baby bottles. And with it, a note that translated to, "Please get off my payroll and go get married." Masi was so mad, then she had a big laugh at the joke and got married not soon after that. He had this gift of making everyone feel special. The philosophy of Ubuntu. While Dad was everyone's favorite, Dad himself had his favorites in the family. He always said that the Das family fortune skyrocketed when Barlow was born. And we really hit the lottery when 3 others were born. I think by that time, he had had enough of all the craziness that my brother and I had put him through. Barlow and Crain enjoyed being on top of the Das mantle for a very long time. That stopped when Willa was born. When Willa was born, it was game over for Dad. He pivoted and adapted and to become an amazing grandfather. Then many years later, Mira came along. Dad had always called both of his granddaughters his Lakshmis. Milan and Mira were his goddesses of good fortune. And he was right. They both absolutely are. As I learn more and more about that, and as I seek to understand his full truth, his life, a truth emerges. Ubuntu's broader meaning is humanity. Dad's family was not just us. It wasn't just his extended family. It was not just his samaj, but his family included everyone that he knew. He brought everyone in to make them his family. His humanity extended to so many people, and unfortunately, most I will never know about. At Dad's cremation in Durham, I realized that Dad had actually been leading two different lives. The one here in the US we already knew about, all the people he had helped. But also another one in India in which we knew nothing about. There were so many people that came up to Vidyalaya and started telling the stories of how Dad helped them to solve this problem with alcohol, and how he had invested in schools and women's cooperatives to get women financially independent. So many stories we would never know about. So many stories Dad didn't tell us because he was never focused on himself. He was always focused on you and how he could help you. Even in India, many people called him Bhakta or Papa. And I think Chetan, who's in India, will miss him the most. For the past 15 years, Chetan was Dad's adopted son, Dad's confidant, and Dad's fixer. He was with Dad and Mom all the time when they were in India. You know the phrase, behind every man stands a strong woman? Well, here's to you, Mom. Dad spread his wings and soared high and did all of these amazing things because he had you to carry the burden with him. Mom, you stood by Dad, made sacrifices in India, Malawi, England, and here in the United States. With your sheer determination and hard work, you helped to execute Dad's vision. In any other lifetime, you would have been a successful chief operations officer in a Fortune 500 company. Mom, I know you were always protective of your family, and it drove you nuts when Dad couldn't say no to anyone who asked for his help, especially in those years when our family was struggling. But I think even Dad knew at that time, and he had full confidence that we were going to make it and be successful. Mom, you never need to worry about anything. You and Dad have built a strong family foundation. We've always had more than enough, and we'll always continue to have more than enough. No one individual will ever be able to fill Dad's shoes, but Dad has taught all of us well. Collectively, all of us can step up, make our contributions, and carry Dad's legacy forward. Dad, the true mark of your legacy is in the people that you leave behind. Your spirit of Ubuntu, your grand nature, and your fearlessness live in the newest generation of leaders in the Das family. Rahul, Raj, and Naren. Dad, thank you for being the Superman in my life and in the lives of so many others. I aspire to be more like you. Ubuntu, I am because we are. Ubuntu, I am because we are.